If you think you need 10 different oils to make soap, you've already been misled. I make soap with only 4 oils: coconut oil, shea butter, olive oil, and castor oil. And it works better than most complicated recipes. I've tested this recipe hundreds of times. I ruined more batches than I'd like to admit, and this is what actually worked. By the end of this video, you won't just follow a recipe. You will understand what each oil does, how ratios change everything, and how to have control over what touches your skin. I will give you the 5 rules that determine whether or not your soap will look amateur or high quality. Let's start with the part that scares people the most: lye, otherwise known as sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is what you need to convert oils and butters into soap and glycerin, the so-called saponification reaction. Sodium hydroxide is highly caustic, and no, there is no lye left in the end product if the soap is made properly. If you still think soap contains lye at the end, you don't understand soap properly. Soap exists because lye reacts with oils. When you do this correctly, all lye is consumed. Here's the key concept most people skip: superfat. Superfat means that there is more oil available than lye. That ensures that the reaction is complete and finishes safely. Before we start preparing the lye solution, there is one non-negotiable rule. We always add the lye in the water, never the other way around. Stick until the end of the video to see the actual recipe and the actual amounts that I'm adding here. So here I have distilled water and sodium hydroxide, otherwise known as lye. The reason why I have distilled water is because I care about consistency. Can you make soap with tap water? Absolutely. But tap water composition changes every day. The salts, the minerals, the metals, everything changes. If you want consistency during your batches, you need distilled water because you know the composition is always the same. That's why we're choosing distilled water when making soap. When handling lye and making the lye solution, first of all, always make sure you wear gloves and you are in a well-ventilated area. So, as I said before, we always gonna add the lye into the water, never the other way around, otherwise you will create a highly exothermic reaction that will generate a lot of fumes and a lot of heat. Let's go ahead and add this. If you want to be totally safe and avoid any overheating, you could also freeze your water before adding the lye. This works particularly well when you're working with juices or milks, where you're substituting part of the lye water with a juice or with a milk, like goat milk or coconut milk. I'm gonna go ahead and stir it softly and then let it aside to cool down. Now our lye solution is cooling down, let's talk about oils and butters. It's the part everyone is obsessing over. People think more oils equals better soap. It doesn't. With only 4 oils, you can create many different products. Let me show you how. We have coconut oil. Coconut oil is high in lauric acid and is suitable for cleansingness, so it's what adds a lot of bubbles into the soap. Then we have shea butter. Shea butter is high in stearic acid that will add a lot of creaminess to your soap. Then we have olive oil. Olive oil is high in oleic acid and that will add conditioning to your soap. And then we have castor oil, which is high in ricinoleic acid, and what it does, it adds a lot of thickness to the lather. Tip number 1, and this is perhaps one of the most important ones: understand your oils and your ratios. A soap that is high in coconut oil, 90% of coconut oil, will be very cleansing and can be used as a dish soap because it has a lot of bubbles and it cleanses all the fat away from the dishes. A soap high in olive oil, 70%, 80% higher, can be highly conditioning and suitable for people with a sensitive skin. A soap that is high in shea butter, 60% minimum, and also high in castor oil will create a very creamy and thick lather that can be used as a shaving soap. And then a balanced recipe that contains all of this can create a soap that is both cleansing and also nourishing for the skin. And this is what we're making today. So we're gonna go ahead and take our butters. So I have coconut oil and shea butter, and we're gonna melt them over a double boiler. So I'm gonna put them in the same bowl here. And let's go melt it over a double boiler. Our coconut oil and shea butter are melted. So now let's add our liquid oils, which is olive oil and castor oil. So we're adding the olive oil and the castor oil. Now we wait for the lye solution and the oils and butter solution to cool down to approximately 29 to 30 degrees Celsius. While we wait, we can go ahead and prepare some other things. So for this soap, I'm gonna split the batch into two. Half of it is gonna be green and the other half is gonna be white. So I'm gonna use my natural mica powders for that. And what you should know about mica powders is that usually you need around 1 teaspoon per pound of oils. So that's 1 teaspoon for approximately 500 grams of oils. What you have to do first with most of the powders is that you have to dissolve it in a bit of oil or water. So let's take our green color first. So you can use a lot of different colorants. I like to use mostly natural colorants. Charcoal is one of my favorite ones. Sea buckthorn oil is also an amazing natural yellowish color. And for this, we're gonna go ahead and add this green oxide. I'm gonna mix it slightly, so that's when I add it into the soap, it's gonna be already mixed. If you don't do that, it might create clumps in your soap butter and it might not dissolve as nicely. For charcoal, I can add it in trays without diluting it into some oil first or water. I just add it straight into my soap butter. Now it's time to talk about essential oils. And here comes tip number 2. If you want to have a long-lasting essential oil blend, you need to add a base. A base is basically a molecule or molecules that are of heavy molecular weight, and they're the ones that evaporate last. The reason you add the base is that it makes other notes like the heart and top notes last longer. So overall, it makes your perfume, your essential oil blend, more long lasting. As a rule of thumb, I like to use 20% base, but of course, every oil is different, so you might have to do some trial and error to figure out which concentration is best and what fits your liking. But I found out that if you add around 20% base, you make your essential oil blend significantly more long lasting. So I'm gonna start off with 10 grams of patchouli essential oil. Patchouli is very earthy, grassy, and some people say that it reminds them of memories of the 60s. And what it does is that it makes all other notes much long lasting, so that your essential oil blend smells nice even 6 months after you make your soap. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add 5 grams of pine needle essential oil, which is very foresty and herbal. Then let's go ahead and add 10 grams of rosemary essential oil. This is one of the key players of this essential oil blend. Last but not least, we're gonna go ahead and first add 5 grams of ginger essential oil. Ginger is spicy and a little goes a long way, so you have to be very careful with ginger because it's very dominant and it can overpower your whole essential oil blend. So first I'm just gonna add 5 grams and see how that looks like. 5 grams is enough, it doesn't need more. How much essential oil should you add? In general, if you have 1,000 grams of oils or 1 kilo of oils, you can add anything from 3% to 5%. That will mean 30 grams of essential oil blend for 1,000 grams of your oils or butter to 50 grams of essential oil blend. I like to add somewhere in the middle, around 40 grams. Again, it depends on your personal preference and how you like your scents to be. If you like very strong scents, you can add 50 grams. If you are overwhelmed by strong scents, you can add 20 grams or 25 grams, depending on your liking. Let's talk about temperature. Tip number 3. Always mix your oils and lye solution at low similar temperature. I like to use 28 to 30 degrees because if you do that, you have better control over your soap butter. It's very common when you make soap, especially when you use essential oils that tend to accelerate trace, that your soap butter will thicken so fast that you won't have time to pour it into your mold. So when you mix them, always make sure you mix them in low temperatures because that gives you more time to experiment and have more confidence and better control over your soap butter overall. So what we are gonna do right now is we're gonna test the temperature. 30 degrees Celsius, which is exactly what we want. So this is where the fun starts. I'm gonna take my stick blender, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna make sure that the lye solution falls on the stick blender. This is just to avoid any turbulence and any air bubbles trapped inside your soap butter. We are mixing slowly. This is beautiful. You can see it starts emulsifying, meaning it starts the oils and lye solution, they start becoming one. So as you can see now, we've reached what's called a light trace. Light trace is when your soap butter barely sits here. So you see it's not completely liquid, but it starts getting slightly thick. And now it's the time where we're gonna split our batch and add our colorants. So let's go ahead and add green inside here and the white one inside here. So of course I'm gonna start mixing the white one first. And then I'm gonna go for the green one. Let's go ahead now and add our essential oils. So I'm adding half here and the other half in the other butter. And then I'm going to mix it. And this is tip number 4. Always add your essential oil blend at the very end when you're about to pour your soap into the mold. Otherwise, you have to know that some essential oils and some fragrance oil tend to accelerate trace and tend to thicken your butter very, very fast. Tip number 5 is that you're gonna tap the mold into the table and shake it to remove any trapped air bubbles. You will see some bubbles coming out when you do that, and that will ensure that you will have a super smooth soap the next day. Our soap is ready to be insulated. So first I'm gonna add some membrane on top and then rub it with a towel. You do not need to add rubbing alcohol. A lot of people add rubbing alcohol when they make soap to avoid soda ash, which is formed when basically remaining lye reacts with the carbon dioxide of the environment and creates this baking soda kind of substance. If you insulate properly, you won't have any soda ash at the end of your soap making. Our soap is insulated, and let's check it in 24 hours. So 24 hours have gone by. Let's see how our soap looks like. Let's go ahead and unwrap it from the towel which was used for insulation. Insulating your soap will also lead to more intense colors if you're working with micas. Let's go ahead and remove it from the mold. Wow, the color is amazing. At this point, I also like to use a peeler to remove these things here. One thing that I didn't mention before is that insulating your soap will also help reach gel phase, which means that the saponification reaction will happen faster and you will also end up getting more intense colors. Now let's go ahead and cut it. This soap cutter, it's homemade, but you can find a lot of different soap cutters online. First, and that looks beautiful. It smells amazing. I love the spiciness of the ginger and the herbal aspect of the rosemary. It's, yeah, I love the soap. Now let's talk about stamping. Stamping is very important for brand awareness, brand identity, but there is a very important thing here on how to stamp properly. You see, if you don't stamp correctly, you might end up having DOS, dreaded orange spots, which is those yellow spots that appear in certain soaps when the oils oxidize. So when stamping your soap, always make sure you use a plastic membrane and that you place it on top of the soap and then you use your stamp to stamp it. If you don't use the plastic membrane, the metal part of the stamp might oxidize the oils of your soap, and that will lead to dreaded orange spots, which will create these yellow oxidized oils that are basically rancid oils, and aesthetically doesn't look nice. But as it's totally safe to use it, it's just that it doesn't look as beautiful. It smells amazing, it looks smooth, and now it's ready to cure. The curing for this recipe, which is a balanced soap recipe, takes around 4 to 6 weeks. You have to cure it in a dry and cool place, so don't cure it in your bathroom because it's very humid, and don't cure it somewhere where there is close to the sun where it's too warm. Just put it somewhere where there is not a lot of light and it's relatively dry, and let it for 4 to 6 weeks. During those 6 weeks, your soap, all the water from the lye, all the water that we used before will start evaporating. So your soap will lose a lot of its weight and it will become harder and eventually more long lasting. Is it safe to use it after 2-3 weeks? Probably yes. The saponification reaction will still be ongoing, but of course it will be complete after a while, and then you have to wait until water evaporates. If you use it after 3 weeks, you probably risk that you get a very slimy soap that melts in the bathroom and it's not very long lasting. So the longer you cure it, the better. Soaps that are made with 100% olive oil take from 6 months up to a year to cure, and this is because olive oil has very long fatty acid chains, so the saponification reaction takes a lot of time for the oleic acid to be converted into soap. So curing time is key here. Thank you so much for watching, and you've reached all the way to the end. What I want to say now is that I'm gonna show you how to calculate your oils and butters and your lye, and we're gonna go through one of my favorite tools, which is the soap calculator. It teaches you about how much lye you should use. It teaches you about superfat. You will have a way better understanding of how to play around and how to create your own recipe. So stick around to go through the soapcalc.net. So welcome to the soapcalc.net. It's one of my favorite soap calculator tools, but there are a lot, so you can choose what fits you best. I like to use this one. So we go to recipe calculator, then we choose the type of lye. So you have here sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide. If you choose potassium hydroxide, this will create a liquid soap, but in our case we use sodium hydroxide because we're making a solid soap. On the weight of oils, I use grams because I live in Europe and I like to use grams. So I choose 1,000 grams because that's the total oil weight that we chose. Here it says water, so we choose lye concentration and we put 35%. Why do I put 35%? This is like a normal amount of lye concentration. It means that you have 35% of your lye solution is lye and the rest is water. So this is a good way to start. If you want to lower it down to 30, you are able to do that. That could work in case you're working with some essential oils that tend to accelerate trace. So it will basically result in a more diluted lye solution, and that will give you more control over your soap butter. But it also means that you will end up adding more water, so it will end up taking a bit more time to cure and evaporate all that water. So I like to use 35% for this one. Superfat we use 5% as we discussed. There are some cases where you can use 12% or even 0%. I have a link in my bio with an ebook that I wrote that has a lot of skincare recipes and soap making recipes. In some of them I use 0%. This is the dish soap that has to be very cleansing, and in others like the Himalayan salt bar I use 12%. Then for the fragrance we're gonna go ahead and use 40 grams per kilo. This is my personal liking. Then here you can see you have all the different oils, and what soap calc will do is that it will tell you if you add this type of oil in this concentration, how much lye do you need to basically convert that oil into soap. And that's what we're gonna do now. So we're gonna add our olive oil, which is here. Then we're gonna add our coconut oil, that was here. Always at the 76 degrees. Then we're gonna go ahead and add the shea butter, and then we're gonna go ahead and add the castor oil, which is up here. So the concentration we used is 40% olive oil, 29% coconut oil, 25% shea butter, and 6% castor oil. So this is a very balanced recipe that is both nourishing because of the olive oil, bubbly because of the coconut oil, creamy because of the shea butter, and thick because of the castor oil. Then I click calculate recipe, viewer print recipe, and here we are. This is basically, it has all the information you need to know. First of all, it has how much water you need to add for your lye solution and how much lye you need to add. So first you add the water and then the lye. Then, as you remember, we measured our oils. So we measured 290 grams of coconut oil and 250 grams of shea butter. Then we added our liquid oils, which was 400 grams of olive oil and 60 grams of castor oil. Now, what I love about SoapCalc, and of course other tools will tell you this, is that it will give you a prediction of how your soap will behave. So it will tell you hardness. What's the typical range of hardness? 29, 54. We are at 41, so we're somewhere in the middle. It also tells us that if we are below 29, our soap will probably be too soft, and that's not too good. If we're above 54, it probably be slightly too hard. The same as cleansing. If you are above 22, your soap will probably be too cleansing and too dry. So you can check all these different qualities here to understand how your soap will behave, and then you can also check here if you're more into chemistry to understand what are the chemicals inside each oil. So oleic and linoleic acid exist in olive oil, ricinoleic acid exists in castor oil, stearic and palmitic acid and myrcenic acid exist in shea butter, and lauric acid exists in coconut oil. So that would be all. If you want to know more and if you want to have more control over what touches your skin, click the link in the description where I have the link in Gumroad where I share an ebook with all recipes, soap making, and also some other skincare recipes like hand cream and shampoo, conditioner bars without the need of a press, a massage candle, a lip balm, and so on. And there I have everything you need to know to take control over what touches your skin. Thank you so much for watching so far, and see you next time.